Today, our group will discuss Chapter 4 Logical Fallacy. We will encounter debates in books, advertisements, TV talk shows, political speeches, newspaper editorials, classroom discussions, and late night Bill meetings with friends. Some of these arguments are reasonable and persuasive, but many of them are flawed. When an argument contains one or more logical fallacies, it's called fallacy. Logical fallacy or fallacy for short is a reasoning error in an argument. Many of the most common logical fallacies will be discussed in this chapter and the next. They are common mistakes and are usually psychologically convincing. There are many common logical fallacies, and they can be classified in many ways. The easiest way to classify such fallacies is to divide them into two categories: correlation fallacy and insufficient evidence fallacy. Correlation fallacy is a logical error that occurs when the current proposition and the conclusion are not logically related. The fallacy insufficient evidence is a logical error that occurs when the current proposition is logically related to the conclusion, but does not provide enough evidence to support the conclusion. The fallacy of correlation will be tested in this chapter. Chapter 6 explores the fallacy in sufficient evidence, the concept of relevance. Before we study the fallacy of correlation, it's important to understand what correlation is. To imply that one comment is important to another comment is to say that it's supposed for opposed in the other. In the other words, one statement is related to another statement if it gives us reason to believe that the second assertion to issue are incorrect. A comment can be related or unrelated to another comment in one of three ways. For another statement, a statement can be beneficially related, negatively related, or logically related. If a statement supports another assertion, is it positively related to that statement? Here are some positive examples of relevance. The first argument is that dogs and cats are the same species. After all, cats are cats, therefore dogs are cats. The second point is that all dogs have 5 legs. Rover is canine, while Rover has 5 legs. Each of the premise is directly related to the conclusion. In other words, everyone has at least one reason to believe that the conclusion is correct. The premise provides logically convincing reason for adopting conclusion in the first and second arguments. The premise of the third argument provides the reasonable argument for believing in the conclusion. The premise in the fourth argument, Chris is a woman, does not provide any possible or decisive basis for believing in the conclusion Chris likes to knit. On the other hand, compare with the situation where the conclusion is considered independent of the premise. The premise makes the conclusion slightly more likely. Therefore, the premise is positively related to the conclusion because it provides some evidence for it. These examples demonstrate two key points about the concept of relevance. First, even if the first assertion is completely incorrect, it is important to another statement. Therefore, the assertion that a dog is a cat is clearly incorrect in the first case. However, this is related to the statement that dogs are cats. Because if the former is true, then the latter must also be true. Negatively related statements are statements that have a negative impact on other statements. Here are two examples of negative correlations. Matty is a high school student, therefore Matty is likely to be a PhD candidate. Athia is a 2-year-old girl, therefore Athia is likely to go to university. In its case, the premise is negatively related to the conclusion. If every premise is correct, then there is at least one reason to believe that the conclusion is incorrect. Finally, some propositions are not logically related to other propositions. If one statement does not support or oppose another statement, then it is logically irrelevant to that statement. Here's a few logically meaningless examples. The sun is the center of the universe, and the earth revolves around it. Therefore, marijuana should be legalized. Last night, I dreamed that Yankees would win the World Series. As a result, the Yankees will win the World Series. There is no reason to believe that a conclusion based on either of these two premises is true or untrue. Therefore, they are not logically related to the conclusion. The fallacy of correlation occurs when the arguer provides reasons that are not logically related to his or her conclusion. The fallacy of correlation usually seems to be a good argument, but it is not. In this chapter, we will explore 11 related fallacies.
Personal attack ad hominem. We commit the fallacies of personal attack when we reject someone's argument or claim by attacking the person rather than the person's arguments or claim. Here is an example. Hugh Hefner, founder of Playboy magazine, has argued against censorship of pornography, but Hefner is an immature, self-indulgent millionaire who's never outgrew the adolescent fantasies of his young. His argument, therefore, is worthless. Notice what is going on here. The arguer makes no attempt to show why Hefner's argument against the censorship of pornography are flawed. Instead, he simply attacks Hefner's characters. In effect, he argues this way. Hefner is a bad person. Therefore, Hefner's argument must be bad. But the pattern of reasoning is clearly fallacious. Even if it's true that Hefner is a bad person, that doesn't mean he is incapable of offering good argument on the topic of censorship. It is important to bear in mind, however, that not very personal attack is fallacies. The fallacies of personal attack occurs only if 1. An arguer rejects another person's argument or claim, and 2. The arguer attacks the person who offers the argument or claim, rather than considering the merit of that argument or claim. Consider some examples of personal attack that aren't fallacies but might easily be mistaken as fallacies. Here is one example. Millions of innocent people die in Stalin's ruthless ideological purge. Clearly, Stalin was one of the most brutal dictators of the 20th century. This personal attack is not a fallacy because no arguments offered by Stalin is rejected on irrelevant personal grounds. There is no fallacious claim that any particular argument of Stanley's must be bad, because Stanley himself was a bad person. The argument, in fact, is a good one. We will come to attacking the motive. Attacking the motive is the error of criticizing a person's motivation for offering a particular argument or claim, rather than examining the work of the argument or claim itself. Here are two examples. Professor Michelson has argued in favor of academic tenures. But why should we even listen to Professor Michelson? As a tenured professor, of course, he is support tenant. Para Simmons, president of the American Trial Lawyer Association, has argued that punitive damage award resulting from tobacco litigation should not be limited. But this is exactly what you would expect her to say. Trial lawyers stand to lose billions if the punitive damage award are limited. Therefore, we should ignore Ms. Simmons' arguments. The example set a common pattern. First, it is biased or has questionable motive. Therefore, its argument or claim should be rejected. The pattern of reasoning is fallacious because people with bias or questionable motive do sometimes offer good arguments. You cannot simply assume that because a person has a vested interest in an issue, any position he or she takes on the issue must be fair or weakly supported. However, that not all attacks on argued motive are fallacious. Here are two examples. Burton Westlake, a spokesperson for the American Tobacco Grower Association, has argued that there is no credible scientific evidence that cigarette smoking causes cancer. Given Westlake's obvious bias in the matter, his arguments should be taken with a grain of salt. Cruz Castellano has testified that Mafia, a hitman Sam Milano, was at the opera at the time the mob informer Piero Rosselli was gunned down, but Castellano was paid $13,000 by the mob for his testimony. Therefore, Castellano's testimony should not be believed. Both of these arguments include attack on an angular motive. Neither, however, is fallacious. Both simply reflect the common sense assumption that arguments put forward by angles with obvious biases or motivations to lie need to be scrutinized with particular care. Thus, the facility of attacking the motive does not consist of simply criticizing another arguer's motives. Instead, it consists of criticizing an arguer's motive rather than offering a rational critical of the argument itself.
The fallacy of looks who talking in committed when an arguer rejects another person's argument or claim because that person failed to practice what he preaches. Here are several examples. Daughter, you should quit smoking. Pattern. Look who talking. I quit when you do. Daughter, small talk. Parents, honey, I don't want you to skip school on senior skip day. You don't want to jeopardize your chance of being class valedictorian, do you? Daughter, but mom, you told me you skipped out on senior skip day. Why do you always get to have all the fun? The logical part of this argument is this. First, it's fair to follow his or her advice. 2. Therefore, its claim or argument should be rejected. But this reasoning is clearly fallacious. Arguments are good or bad not because of who offer them, but because of their own intrinsic strength or weakness. You cannot refute a person's argument simply by pointing out that her or she failed to practice what her or he preaches. It should be noted, however, that there is nothing fallacious as such in criticizing a person's hypercritical behavior. For example, Jim, our neighbor, just gave me a hand time again yesterday about washing our car during this drought emergency. Patty, well, he's right, but I wish that hypocrite would lay up to his hour advice. Just last week I saw him watering his lawn in the middle of the afternoon. Here, Patty is simply pointing out justifiably that their neighbor is a hypocrite because he does not reject any argument or claim offered by the neighbor. However, no fallacy is committed. Closely related to the fallacy of looks who talking is the fallacy of two broad mackerel, which occurs when an arguer attempts to justify a wrongful act by claiming that some other act is just as bad or wrong. Here are some examples. I don't feel guilty about cheating on Dr. Poyer's test. Half the class cheats on his test. Why pick on me, officer? Nobody come to a complete stop at that stop sign. Martis, pass. Quit hitting your sister. Part, well, she beat me. We have all offered our share of such excuses, but however tempting such excuses may be, we know that they can never truly justify our merits. Of course, there are times when an act that would otherwise be wrong can be justified by citing the wrongful action of others. Here are two examples. Police offers. Why did you surprise this man with paper spray? You, because he attacked me with a knee. I did it in self-defense. Father, why did you go swimming when the pool was closed? Son, because my friend John Champions and was drowning. I did it to save his life. There are clear cases where the justification of virtue, in fact, that to justify what would otherwise be wrongful behavior. Not all cases, however, are so clear. The fallacy of two broad mackerel is often confused with the fallacy of looks who talking. This is understandable because it is easy to think of examples of arguments that commit fallacy. For example, Mother, honey, it's wrong to steal. How would you feel if someone stole your favorite store? Chief, but you told me you stole your friend teddy bag when you were little school, so stealing isn't really wrong. This argument commits the fallacy of two-pronged macquarie because it attempts to justify a wrongful act by citing another wrongful act. It also commits the fallacy of loosely talking because it dismisses an argument beyond the arguer's failure to practice what she practiced. The fallacy of two-pronged macquarie is, in fact, distinct from the fallacy of loosely talking. The key difference between the two are summarized in the box on page 126.
The fallacy of statistics is committed when an arguer threatens harm to a reader or listener if he or she does not accept the arguer's conclusion, and this threat is irrelevant to the truth of the arguer's conclusion. Here are examples. Diplomat to diplomat. I'm sure you agree that we are the rightful ruler of the San Marco Islands. It would be regrettable if he had to send armed force to demonstrate the validity of our claim. Gun laws be to politicians. The gun control bill is wrong for America, and any politician who supports it will discover how wrong they were at the next election. In both of the example, the statistics employed provide two relevant evidence that supports the static conclusion. As the second example makes clear, the fallacy of statistics need not involve a threat of physical force. Any kind of threat can be invoked, and the threat may be veiled. Appeal to pity. The fallacy of appeal to pity occurs when an arguer inappropriately asks them to invoke feeling of pity or compassion from his listener or reader. Example: parent to high school football court. I admit my son purely can't run, pass, cut, block, or tackle, but he deserves to make the football team. If he doesn't make the team, he's going to be emotional weak, and he may even drop out of school. Logically, however, the arguments are clearly fallacious because the premises provide no relevant reason to accept the conclusions. Following example illustrate mother to daughter. Nana was asking about the other days. He's so lonely and crazy since Grandpa passed away, and her or he may seem to get worse every day. She done so much for you over the years. Don't you think you should pay her a visit? High school softball court. Girls District Championship is biggest game of your life. This is what been working for all year. Your parents have counting on you. Your school is counting on you, and your community is counting on you. Make them proud. Play like the champions you are. In the examples, the appeal to emotion appropriate and relevant to the arguer's legitimate purpose. When emotional appeal are used in this way, the appeal are fallacious. Bandwagon argument. A bandwagon argument is one that plays on a person's desire to be popular, accepted, or valued rather than appealing to a logically relevant reason or evidence. Here are three examples. On the really cool kids at its Jefferson High School small cigarette
Therefore, you should too. I can't believe you are going to the library on a Friday night. You don't want people to think you are neat, do you? There must be something to astrology. Millions of Americans can be wrong. The basic pattern of the occurrence is this: everybody or a select group of people believe or do it. Therefore, you should believe or do it too. The pattern is fallacious because the fact that a belief or practice is popular usually provides a little or no evidence that the belief is true or that the practice is good. The bandwagon appears are not fallacious because the premises are
Storming. Storming fallacy is committed when an arguer distorts an opponent's argument or claim to make it easier to attack by misrepresenting, exaggerating, or even completely inventing someone else's argument. It's easier to present your argument as logical. Strawman fallacy are extremely common in British. For example, Senator Biddle has argued that we should outlaw violent pornography. Obviously, the senator favors complete governmental censorship of books, magazines, and films. This argument distorts the senator's view. He presented by wrong position of senator and then regular charge instead of actual position of senator. The debater must take measure on the strawman. The logical pattern of strawman arguments is this. The first, its view is wrong or unjustified, but where its view has been unfairly characterized or misrepresented. The second, therefore, its view should be rejected. Red herring. The red herring fallacy is committed when an arguer tries to sidetrack his audience by raising an irrelevant issue and then claims that the original issue has effectively been settled by the irrelevant diversions. Here is an example. Many people criticize Thomas Jefferson for being an owner of slaves, but Jefferson was one of our greatest presidents, and his Declaration of Independence is one of the most eloquent pleas for freedom and democracy ever written. Fallacy by diverting the reader's attention from the original argument and then claiming that the original argument has been disproved by an unrelated diversion. The arguer commits red herring fallacy. Red herring fallacies are also extremely common in British.
3. This chapter details 11 common fallacies of relevancy. Person attack. As hominem, an accuser rejects a person's argument or claim by attacking the person's character rather than the person's argument or claim. Attacking the motive. An accuser criticizes a person's motivation for offering a particular argument or claim, rather than examining the word of the argument or claim itself. Loophole talking. An accuser rejects another person's argument or claim because that person is a hypocrite. two wrong maths arise. An accused attempts to justify a wrongful act by claiming that some other act is just bad or worse. Psychiatrists. An accused threatens harm to a reader or listener. Appeal to pity. An accused attempts to evoke feelings of pity or compassion, where such feelings, however understandable, are not relevant to the truth of the accused's conclusion. Bandwagon argument. An accused appeals to a person's desire to popular objectives or values rather than to logically relevant reason or evidence. Strawman. An accused misrepresents another person's position to make it easier to attack. Red herring. An accused tries to strengthen her agency by raising an irrelevant issue, then claims that all original issue has been effectively settled by the irrelevant diversion. Equivocation. An accused uses a keyword in argument in two or more different senses, basing the question. An accused states or assumes as the premises the very thing he is seeking to prove as a conclusion. We are Group 3. Thanks for listening.